Today I sat down with David Schomer. He is an Amazon seller, a CPA accountant, and he's also the owner of Firing the Man, a great podcast interviewing some great people. I was fortunate enough to be a guest at one point. Now, we talk a lot about the financial side of things when it comes to running an Amazon business, as is Dave's experience. Really, if you're looking for some tips on how to get better on the financial aspects that relate to your Amazon business, this one is for you guys. Welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I talk to world-class professionals on what it takes to scale successful businesses. I dive deep asking questions to people who are running unicorn businesses, to raising funds, to buying businesses, mergers and acquisitions, IP and patent law, what is to manage performance management. I mean, the list goes on. The idea really is, how do I create knowledge and learning for you guys listening in? And of course, myself, getting the floor with people who I, in many cases, would never dream to share a room with. Before we jump into the episode, I've got to give a special thank you to our sponsors. Firstly, over at Global Wide Advisors, a leading digital consumer products investment bank focused on optimizing the sales process. An incredible team, always happy to pick up the phone and educate you or anyone about the sales process and what you should really consider, and can obviously help take you to market or even acquire businesses. I ring them for just about everything these days. Us over at Multiply Me, we are the end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, helping find better talent and onboarding them effectively. And last but not least, Escala, our management consultancy focused on process improvement, where we help build better systems for your business. That's all the ads you're going to get from me, ladies and gentlemen. The rest is all about learning. I hope you really enjoy and get as much out of these sessions as I do, sitting face to face with some of the world-renowned leaders in their respective fields, asking them the tough questions that they're not often asked. All right, David, mate, welcome to an episode of Successful Scales, buddy. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Mate, I'm doing fantastic. Super excited to sit down. I know we had the good fortune of sitting down a couple of weeks ago, and then we went on your podcast. Anyone who's listening, Firing the Man. I'm not sure when I'll be featured, but I loved, just to tell you straight up, loved your series of questions, how you guys go back and forth. What did you call it? The fire round? What's the...
Yeah, the fire round. We asked the same list of questions to all of our guests, and it's great, like, to get book recommendations and insights. And so, but yeah, we had a ton of fun recording that podcast, and you were an excellent guest. So we'll be publishing that mid-October. So definitely be getting in touch, and you can share it with your audience.
For sure, absolutely will. And yeah, a lot of fun. So excited to sort of continue this on here. And you know, I've gotten to know you a little bit and your background, and, you know, super smart things that you and your business partner are working on. And so before we get into today, I'd love you to sort of walk me through, for those listening at home, for their benefit, your background and who you are and where you sit today.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting from the beginning, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and in a smaller town. Went to St. Louis University, wanted to see the big city, and went to St. Louis U, majored in accounting and finance. And after college, I went and worked for a consulting firm for 8 years, and took the CPA exam, the CFA exam, and got to work on a lot of really cool projects, namely like transactions, financial due diligence, got to work on some fraud and forensic projects. And while I was doing that, I had a interest in the side hustle. I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial bug. And, you know, in the area that I grew up, Amazon was excellent because people could order, say, like parts for a tractor and have them in 2 days. And they would have otherwise spent half of a day, you know, driving 50 miles to a store. And I just really saw the potential here. And so started an FBA business about 5 years ago, honestly, just to earn a little bit of extra cash flow. Now that continued to grow, and I started taking it more and more seriously. About 2 years ago, I met a guy by the name of Ken Wilson, who's the co-host of the Firing the Man podcast. And simply put, his girlfriend was sick of listening to him talk about conversion optimization and pay-per-click advertising. And my wife had it as well. And so we kind of like found each other and vented and like really nerd out on that stuff. And so met Ken, and we started the Firing the Man podcast, and are also Amazon operators, as well as a couple other e-commerce sales channels. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
A very nicely succinct little intro, just sort of gliding through 8 years of consulting work and working through things like financial forensics. I mean, in fact, what was that like? What is even involved in financial forensics? Who are the bad guys, and how are you going after them?
I'll tell you what, it was awesome. We would subcontract with the FBI. We worked on a Ponzi scheme that impacted probably like 75 different people. We did a earnings manipulation project that totaled $500 million. It dealt with SEC and Department of Justice, and it was cool. But you would really dive deep on these projects. That earnings manipulation case, I worked 18 months on that, and they had subpoenaed emails, and you really kind of got to know these people that were perpetrating the fraud. At least it felt like that. And so here's what I'll say about that. And I really did like it. I like that investigative work. However, everyone's pissed off, right? If you're a company owner, you're pissed off because there was fraud in your company. If you committed fraud, you're pissed off because you're going to go to jail or be penalized. It's just not a great environment. And so you it's like there's no like cheerful smiles when you walk in. And so while that was awesome, like I love like providing awesome products to people, and that makes them happy. And so like that environment, like it starts to kind of wear on you, where everyone's just a little grumpy all the time. And
so wait. So mate, this is, I mean, from me looking in and listening, I mean, and I don't have to deal with the shit of people being super angry and you're totally destroying like, these criminal activity, destroying their lives here. But like, were you physically going into their offices, actually meeting with the people, or was it done all online?
No. Yeah. We would go in and meet face to face, and here's what I'll tell you about some of the people that we investigated is just because you commit a $500 million fraud doesn't mean you're necessarily a bad guy. And let me explain this. One of the individuals, man, I sat across the table from countless times. He is a family man. We talked a lot about smoking meats. I love like smoking meats, and like we shared that common interest. And he was very nice and respectful to me. Now, he had screwed over a ton of shareholders and done something that was like morally wrong. However, like still like on the surface, a nice guy. And so that's something that, it was wild. And you would, when you'd subpoena emails, man, you'd see everything. People having affairs with other people in the office. I mean, people put all kinds of shit in emails that they shouldn't. And it was wild. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton, and have used a lot of those like experiences as I've been running my own businesses.
Well, yeah, I can just imagine. I mean, from the deep analytics and the problem solving and trying to get to the root cause analysis of like what's actually going on here, to like people management, conflict resolution, like it's a hugely broad gamut of skills that you'd have to invoke just going through this entire process. So I don't know how much you can divulge or not divulge, but like you're saying he's not a bad guy. He's done $500 million worth of, was it intentional? Did he know what he was doing? Or was it like, I didn't realize to the extent of how I was like manipulating the system.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was fully aware of it, and it was intentional. He had a ton of stock options that vested when stock price hit a certain point. And so he, wanted to hit earnings targets, and you fudge a couple cents one quarter and then a couple more cents the next quarter, and it just kind of creates a monster. And so, he was fully aware of what was going on. And I think it's just kind of a slippery slope. And so, certainly there were some issues with that company. in terms of like internal controls, and that, it should have been prevented, but yeah, it went on for like 10 years. But
Wow.
yeah, we over the course of that investigation, we tracked down every last dollar, and it was, I mean, I touched a lot of different people, and it was unfortunate. And so, yeah, that was my experience.
Was that a publicly traded company, or that was privately owned?
Yeah, it was a publicly traded company, and so the SEC got involved, and it was pretty big on the news. In like it is public information who it is. However, I have that like veil of confidentiality to where I tell you details,
you don't need to
but
you don't need to share. I mean, it's not gonna make any difference to my life. But no, the reason why I asked that question is from a visibility and understanding standpoint. Like there is, and you mentioned shareholders a few times, and that can be taken in a few different ways. But just sort of breaking down what I was hearing, it sounded to me like a publicly traded company where there's all these other stakeholders that should have been informed through their annual general meeting or the quarterly town halls, or however it's, and the financials. So when you were talking about the systems and controls, for 10 years for that to go on, it's a pretty wild story.
It was, and really good experience. I wouldn't trade those, working in consulting, you work some long hours, and but I wouldn't trade those years for anything. I worked with great people, learned a ton, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, mate. I hear. I mean, I come from agency land, but the skill sets that you learn and the experiences working those long hours, I mean, that's when you're putting in the work, and that's what's allowing you to take that next step. And we were talking before we hit record, like the entrepreneurial life, it's not all that it's perceived to be cracked up to be from the outside looking in, like being a business owner and running your own show. There's lots of challenges and lots of different things. So going through an experience like that and going through those long hours and trying to really find that root cause analysis and needle in a haystack, super fundamental and foundational for running your own business today. So mate, I'd love to what were the products that you started selling? You said 5 years now. You still selling? Is that store still active?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my first launch was a total bust. And we can go into that, but then it got into the pet space, and that was, I still have that brand today. And so, but it's actually a pretty good story. And kind of like a cautionary tale to listeners about using tools. It was the week before Easter, and I was on Jungle Scout, and I found this product, candlestick holders. And if you imagine holding a 6-inch candle and lighting it, wax will get on your hand, absent this little cardboard wafer that sits above it. And as it turns out, and I didn't know this, but like all Catholic masses have a candlelight vigil on Easter. And so the volume for this was soaring. And I thought that I had found the best product ever, and sourced 10,000 of those. I still have like a couple thousand in my basement. It was a total bust. And so, you hear a lot of these people getting into it that will, use like, Helium 10 has a great tool. Jungle Scout has great tools. But you can't rely on those solely. I kind of use them as a sanity check. Build a brand, come up with an idea, and use that as a sanity check, as opposed to, doing that in reverse. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you were telling me about the candlesticks just now, it just has me thinking about my cousin who has started multiple businesses. He's got a massive ketogenic company right now out of the US. And one of his early ones was he was selling these ice towels where you take the towels and you put them in, in the cooler and they get super cold. And he ordered like 10,000 of them. I shit you not, for like 5 years. We were going to music festivals. Like we couldn't even get rid of them. We had so many of them. It was, where it was a bust. But yeah, there's so many of those stories of like over-indexed on the first run. And lo and behold, like you've still got storage closets just filled with some random product.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you hear of an Amazon seller that doesn't have a story like that, I think they're full of shit. I really do. I mean, if you're in this long enough, you have some wins and you have some losses, and yeah, that was one of my losses for sure.
Well, you learn from it. And on that and on that point, and we were talking a little bit before we hit record, but mate, you're a CPA, right? You're CFA, CPA, all these acronyms that I'm learning now for the first time. No, I know what a CPA is. But the point I'm making here is you can help a lot of people, namely yourself to date, but just in general with some really key understandings on how you approach business operations. When I was talking to you before and I was saying, the things that are really interesting to me is like the assessment of what is a viable business to potentially acquire, what are the things that you're looking for. But if we took a step back and when you're looking at, your e-commerce businesses that you run today, like what are some of the fundamentals that you think a lot of sellers are missing on that you think could have huge impact if they just got their numbers in order?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the get-go, when you're thinking about products to source, this is something where you may find an excellent product, have excellent packaging, but when you look at like the market price of that, it's just too low. And so, I've come up with a formula. I'm going to use the phrase fully loaded cost. So usually you're going to go to your supplier. They're going to say, the unit cost is $5, but then on top of that, you've got shipping, you've got like labeling, you've got packaging, you've got tariffs. And so, everything that it takes to get that sellable unit in. So, sticking with this example, you may have a $5 unit cost, but you may have a fully loaded cost of $7. And usually when I'm looking at new products to sell, I will take that fully loaded cost and multiply it by 4. That's like a really good product that sells really like that. Those margins, those work really well.
So that's the strategy, is in like to decide if the product has viability, you'll look at the fully loaded costs and then you'll multiply it by 4, and that'll be the recommended retail price on Amazon, let's say.
Right. And so, sticking with this example, say you have a $7 fully loaded unit cost, you're going to want to go on Amazon and see competitors selling that for around $28. And I will like on the 3X. So like if it was selling for 21, I may go after it if I really like it, or if I think I can do something way different that addresses like some customer complaints. But man, 4 or above is the sweet spot. And the higher you can get, the better. If you can have a 7X product, boys, that make your life easier. And so, this is getting to profit margin, really, like how much meat is on the bone when making sales is great, but you hear revenue's a vanity number. Boy, is that true. And so, my goal is to generate net income after my expenses. And that increases the value of your business. That allows you to put more money in your pocket, and it allows you to reinvest into, more products or building out a team. And so, I think a lot of sellers start off with bootstrapping, and having done this, you take a company from like 0 to $1 million in revenue in 2 or 3 years, you will never feel more poor from a cash flow standpoint. I mean, if you're bootstrapping, and that's something that seems like counterintuitive until you go through it. Just like keeping up with inventory orders is exhausting, and having to staying in stock is the name of the game in this business. And so anyway, that's the higher your profit margins, the easier that becomes. But what I find on Amazon is there's a lot of people that have, say, like 5% profit margins after everyone gets paid. And there's, if you really want me to nerd out on this, I can, but there's like, when I get my P&Ls, I kind of like to modify it a little bit and take a look at it. You want to get into that?
Let's get into it, mate. Let's go.
All right, here we go. So
now listen, I know from my perspective, this is super helpful for me when I'm thinking through, like, even just talking from getting from 0 to $1 million, we bootstrapped our business. We've hit those milestones. We've hit multi-million-dollar status, and we're going through this process. But the reality is, like, cash is tight. how do we push growth? We're building so much so quickly. We really need to focus in. So talk to me about the P&Ls. I mean, I know I'm talking about a service business, but I'm familiar and have been in the product space. And I think for a lot of the listeners, it'll help them too. So talk nerdy to me.
Yeah, let's do it. So I like that. So, typically if you get your P&L back, you're going to have revenue at the top. You're going to have your cost of goods sold. So this is kind of where your fully loaded cost is going to hang out. And that's going to get you to gross profit. And then underneath that, you're going to have Amazon PPC and a bunch of operating costs. Most of those are going to be fixed. That would be like, any subscriptions that you have or any personnel that you've hired or contractors. And so what I like to do is take my revenue minus my cost of goods sold minus my PPC and analyze what that profit margin is. And here's why I like to do this. And let's stick with our example of we have a fully loaded cost of $7, and for this example, let's pretend that FBA fees and referral fees are baked into that. All right, and we're selling it for $10. So we have a 30% profit margin. Now you fold in PPC. What I have found, especially on Amazon, not as much on Walmart, is that the break-even ACoS for a lot of the keywords is going to be about 30%. It is the free markets are at work here, and this is a perfect example of supply and demand, where there is demand up until that 30% point, but really not beyond it, right? Like you don't want to sell at a loss, and so it's hard to gain a competitive edge there. And so, I see a lot of really high revenue companies. And when you fold in PPC costs, they're really, they're single digit profitability. And that's the name of the game. That's what you're taking home and putting in your pocket. And so that's something that, you say, okay, how do I improve this situation, right? If I'm selling at about break even, well, you can go back to your supplier and you can say, I need better pricing. So, if you drill down, like what does it cost to make something? If you drill down far enough, you're going to get to a commodity price, right? And so like, this has some plastic, it has some metal in it. And, that's like pretty standard pricing. And so you can only improve so much there. And so anyway, I really like to analyze my P&L, and I like to, that process that I walked through, revenue minus cost of goods sold minus PPC, I really like to see that north of 10% at least. And, if you look at rising PPC costs, that 10% can get wiped out. We've seen it this year with rising PPC costs, and there are just certain keywords that are not worth bidding on. And it seems like the free markets kind of push you to selling at break even, which is, I don't know. I don't want to be in that game. I don't want a high revenue number and zero net income. I show up to work every day to generate net income. So, anyway, that's something that I think, if you're getting your books done, which you should, it is a relatively inexpensive thing to outsource. That is something you should be doing on a monthly basis is, taking into account PPC, how profitable is my business?
So like when you look at something like that, right? When you look at the PPC and the rising costs, and it's been a trend in the space. I mean, Amazon's effectively just saying, all right, guys, we're just going to charge you 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% more than we have historically, yielding you, they can do whatever they want, really. So when you encounter a situation like that, what's your immediate go-to? Are you stepping back into your PPC management? Are you starting to look at other sources of traffic? And I'm seeing Pinterest popping up a lot as not a new source, but a source where people are touting it as free traffic, and TikTok is becoming more effective and a hotter commodity when it comes to external traffic. Like how do you, or how should someone look at that as a next step? Like, I'm operating at no net income. I'm doing 5 million on Amazon, but I'm making absolutely $0 in my pocket. Like, what's your game plan? What's your next step?
Well, there's a couple moves that you can make. I would not necessarily suggest eliminating PPC. However, I would like scrub your keywords and figure out what's profitable. I mean, we have some keywords that we bid on at a 5% ACOS. I love those words. I have an unlimited budget on those words,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to do that, right? And so, I think you can slim down your PPC in terms of what you're bidding on. And what you may find is, hey, there's not a ton of keywords, and that hit my target ACOS, and so I'm going to take those dollars and invest it into influencer marketing or into Pinterest or some of these other channels. And I'll tell you what, that's a conversation we've had internally is, boy, do we spend a lot on PPC. And if we were to take those literally hundreds of thousands of dollars and place them elsewhere, what could we get? We could have a pretty fire social media team. We could reach out to like literally every influencer in the space. And so I think that's a consideration. And I think some people get caught into a PPC trap where they are at break even and they're spinning their wheels. And when it's time to, place an order for inventory, you're short on cash flow. And so, I think one thing that should also be evaluated here is your sale price. If you move your sale price up 20%, that's going to bring your ACOS down. Right. And so, you look at like shipping this year in 2021, you go from $3,000 containers to $20,000 containers. For the most part, that's impacting all of our competitors. That's impacting everyone. And at some point you need to pass that cost on to the customer. And so, we have adjusted sale prices up because, we can't shoulder that entire burden, when our shipping costs go up by that much. And so, I don't know. I think that's something that people often like are reluctant to do. However, I do think like it's smart business. You need to pass some of that cost on to your customer, or you're going to be out of business and you're not going to have a customer to serve.
Wise words, mate. And I think that for most people going through, and it's a global, everyone from the typical is from 4,000 to 14,000. I'm hearing 20,000 now. I mean, it's just absolutely gone bananas. And wrap that in with the inventory limitations and the challenges that you're going to experience throughout this Q4 when you talk FBA. It's going to be a challenging time for just about everyone. And we were talking just before about the cash flow crunch, but you actually to lead you in here and to talk about the thing that you know best, but we're talking a little bit about ways in which you can sort of help. It's not about de-risking, but helping with that financial situation, that cash flow. And you're talking about, I think, inventory management or how you can actually deal with your suppliers. I don't think I'm making that up, am I?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think what you're alluding to is payment terms. And so, the typical example or what usually, if you place an order, your first order with a supplier, pretty standard is like, we want 30% down and then 70% when the goods ship. And so, those goods are going to be on a ship, crossing the ocean for 45 days. It's going to take 2 weeks to get into Amazon. And so you have a good amount of time before, you're actually realizing any cash flow to pay for those goods. And guess what? What if you order candlestick holders and they don't sell worth of shit, right? then you're stuck holding the bag, and you won't have any profitable sales to cover that. And so, one thing that I think a lot of people do is they will try to negotiate with their supplier on price. And, if you don't get any movement there, one thing that I think is really valuable is getting creative with payment terms. And so one thing that I really like to do is say, hey, we'll still give you your 30% down, because typically that's going to cover like their material cost. So if I were to disappear or fall off the face of the earth, they're not going to lose money. They're going to cover their material costs. 30% down, 30% when the products leave port, and then the balance, so 40% when the goods are checked into Amazon warehouses. And really, the further you can kick that can down the road in terms of like paying for your goods, the better. And it's one of those things that I think if you want to get the most effective result, and I'll give you an example. I've got a really seasonal product right now that does awesome on Black Friday and Christmas. With shipping the way it is and with the delays, we placed our order in June. Now I could have sent my vendor an email and said, hey, can you give me better terms? And they likely would have said no. However, we jumped on a screen share. I put together an Excel model that showed last year's sales. And I showed, hey, listen, we're ordering in June, but we're not going to receive this cash flow until January, like after our busy season spike. And explained how we could order more from them if they would help us out on payment terms. And you present a situation where, hey, if you're flexible with me, I'm going to, in the long term, put more money in your pocket. That is something that is received much better by manufacturers. And so that's something that I would say I could talk for an entire podcast about payment terms, but I would say like the short lesson is like the longer you can defer cash leaving your bank account and going into someone else's bank account, the better. And sometimes that's a better situation than decreasing your unit cost.
Yeah. You take me back to when we used to charge everyone up front via credit card on the Multiply Me side. And now we have accounts payable and receivable, and people are 30 and 60 and 90 days behind. And it's like, shit, we had a beautiful system. We've broken our system to accommodate to taking on more clients. And, you really got to assess, what are you giving up or what's the true benefit? But I mean, that's a really smart play. Just to sort of recap, the fact that you actually bring the financial model, you show last year's earnings and what that actually yielded as an ROI, what the projected growth is like, and when the peak seasons are. When you build a plan and you put it in front of someone's face, it becomes a whole lot more material and real for them to understand that, we have a partnership and a relationship here. And I don't know where I'm assuming China, but I don't know where your products are coming out of. It's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you sit in the world. It's all about relationships. And so if you can invest in that relationship and you can work together to build a mutually beneficial win-win situation, then you're always going to be better placed. And like you said, just haggling down the unit economics around the specific product that you're looking to procure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final thought on that is I read an excellent book by a guy named Chris Voss, and I'm blanking on the name of this.
Never Split the Difference.
Yes. Okay. So he has, listen, whether you're in e-commerce or not, you should read this book. It's an awesome book. The guy's an FBI hostage negotiator and just presents like a lot of really effective ways to negotiate. One thing I love out of that book is giving people the choice between two alternatives and allowing them to make the final decision, right? People like to be in control. And so, with this particular supplier, I'll walk you through exactly. I said, listen, we will order $70,000 worth of inventory if we keep our current payment terms, or we'll order $100,000 worth of inventory if you can meet these payment terms. I was economically indifferent between those two amounts. And they ended up choosing the higher dollar amount. And so it's, anyway, that's something that I think can be really effective, and just explaining like, hey, yes, I want better payment terms, but here's why. Like, I'm going to wait 7 months to get paid out on this. And so can you help me out here?
It's great advice, and it's a great insight for anyone to take on. Because again, it's not just a, person, it's a real person on the other end of the Zoom link and or phone call and or email or however you're communicating, usually Skype. And the reality is, if you can build that rapport and you can really show visually why I'm actually requesting these payment terms, it makes it a whole lot more believable and, clearly achievable. I mean, you were able to build favorable terms and you ended up ordering 30% more when it comes to the investment you made inside of that inside of that supplier. And it's a win-win situation. So, mate, very, very valuable nugget of information. What else you got up your sleeve? I feel like you got a few more of those gems.
Yeah, I'll tell you one. So to all the folks that are listening that are bootstrapping, and man, I've been there and it's tough. It's a grind. And one thing that specifically Amazon sellers, Amazon dangles this little carrot on your homepage, and that is Amazon lending. And, when you are in a cash crunch, it is really tempting to hit that button. The money shows up in your account a couple days later. However, I think that you really need to dig in on interest rates here. And it varies. I've seen some things like as low as 8%, and then I've seen things as high as like 15%. And so, we've already talked about tight margins, but if you have a 15% profit margin and you have a 15% interest rate, guess what? You're at break even again. And so this is something that I think is really important, is to explore your alternatives. And one thing that I encourage people to do is look at traditional bank financing, like a business line of credit. And here's what I'll tell you. There are a couple things that are going to help you, win over a banker. And that is professionally prepared financial statements. They're going to ask for them. And it's nice to just have those ready to go. However, what I found is you can find a business line of credit for somewhere around 6%, 5 or 6%, depending on the banker. And that's great. You don't pay any interest until you draw. And it serves as like a nice piggy bank when you're gearing up for busy season. And in terms of interest rates, boy, are they a lot cheaper. And so, when I think about lending, I place a very high premium on the interest rate. Of course, I value the relationship. But at the end of the day, the higher the interest rate, the more that's going to cut into net income. And again, I'm in the business of generating net income. So I think.
Any preferred solutions that you like to work with?
Yeah. So I work with Bank of Montreal, and they have been wonderful. It's I would have to look. I think I'm right around like that 6% mark. And Bank of Montreal is who I've been working with. Here's what I'll tell you. In order to find them, I was probably told no 10 times by 10 other banks. And the reason that they would often quote is they don't really recognize e-commerce as a legitimate business. For instance, on my balance sheet, I have inventory in my computer. That's it. I don't have any real estate. I don't have any really hard assets that they could seize. And so, I would prepare yourself as you're talking to local bankers to be told no. But, every time you're told no, you're one step closer to someone telling you yes. And so, I think it is prudent as a business owner, at least once a quarter, to take an entire day to dedicate to reaching out to people at banks to try to find the most effective way to finance your operations. And, even if you have a current line of credit in place, see if you can refi into something better. And so that's something that I think is, before you look at Amazon lending, go get told no by 10 banks and get told yes by one. And check out Bank of Montreal. They've been great to work with.
Great insight, mate, and a lot of value. 6% sounds great to me. I'd say the only companies that I've heard that are matching things like that in the space that are sort of up and coming is like 8Fig and Sellers Funding have some pretty decent lines depending on where you're at and where you sit, but 6% sounds like the goods to me. So yeah, a lot of no's, but that one yes has probably saved you, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, some of these lenders get pretty creative on the language they use to describe, 3% interest rates, compounded monthly, or, payments due every 2 weeks, and so one thing, and all lenders are legally bound to disclose this, is the APR. And that is your apples to apples comparison. And so just because it says 3% doesn't mean that's a 3% annual rate. And so, when I'm evaluating lenders, I'll make a spreadsheet and I'll simply have the bank name and the APR. and any annual fees or stuff like that. But that allows you to get everything apples to apples, because it's not like, some people will quote weekly interest rates, which are, has a 30% APR. But when you compound it on a weekly basis, it's, 1%, right? And so, so anyway, that's just a little pro tip on people shopping around for credit.
Mate, you've given some great pro tips and a lot of insights in, what's been a relatively short amount of time. I can't believe we're getting close to the top of the hour here. But, I know you're selling on Amazon right now and you have Firing the Man. Like, are there people, are you delivering any sort of side hustle, consulting solutions? Are you, who would want to reach out to you? What are you looking to promote? Talk a little bit about Firing the Man as well, because that was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ken and I have kicked around the idea of coaching, and here's what we've come up with is you see a lot of these courses and I'm going to call it what it is. There's a lot of internet gurus with their Lamborghinis and they'll sell a $99 course. And I would be very interested in the success rate of how many people take those courses and go on to earn 5 or 6 figures doing that. And so we really don't have any interest in doing that. It's just kind of, and I will also say that I don't think we could provide a course at a low cost that would outperform some of the ones that are out there. And so we do offer one-on-one coaching, but it's for only people that are very serious about it. And because as a coach, it will make me feel very good to see someone take it to 6 figures. We had, and we've done that. We've done that before. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see, like, if you're a coach, like your athlete succeed, right? Well, this is as a business coach, like, I really want to see people succeed. And so, we take on a very usually just like one at a time, because we want to give a lot of attention and, one-on-one meetings and whatnot. So, yeah. But anyway, if anyone has any questions, man, reach out. I love talking about this. And
what's the best way to get you?
firingtheman.com. There's if you just have like a general question, like we have a microphone on our website, hit us up there. Or you can hit me up at, David at 8020capital.com. It's 80 and then 20 spelled out capital.com. And, be happy to connect.
Well, mate, if you guys have listened in to this far in and you've got that much value, I mean, that is an amazing offer and, absolute stand-up guy. Dave, mate, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. And, I know you've got a lot of things cooking and, just your consideration to help others and to come in and try and educate people listening here and everything you do, mate. It's an honor to know you. And again, thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate it, Yanni. It was wonderful to be a guest. I appreciate the invite and look forward to staying in touch.
100%, mate. Cheers.